I would like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Supervisors. And at this time, we're going to ask Mr. Watson to give us an invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Bow our head. Heavenly Father, thank you for all the bounties bestowed upon us. We thank you for the opportunity to serve our community. And we remember above all else, we are all God's children. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, if you'd like, you can call me to do the budget presentation before we open the public hearing or after, but whatever your pleasure.
Let's do the budget presentation before the public hearing. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I think there's slides, or the smaller 3 per page in your packet, but happy to be here tonight to present for the proposed 2024 tax levy and 24-25 budget, and that's the school and county budget public hearing. As you know, our budget schedule, we're getting down to hopefully the end of the schedule. We've got the hearing tonight. The board has proposed to move our meeting from the 23rd to the 30th. The last meeting will be, our regular meeting on June 11th would be the approval of the appropriations resolution. That will conclude our budget process for the year. The board and staff have been working on the proposed budget since January of this year. The board has held 5 specific meetings or work sessions to work on the budget. The proposed budget has been advertised in the Farmville Herald and made available on the website and here in the county administration office. Some of our budget goals as adopted by the board for the budget: to maintain or improve current levels of service, to stay competitive with staff salaries and address compression issues, to continue financial planning for our capital improvement projects, including the elementary school project, the Sandy River water system, the animal shelter, the public safety radio system improvements, and also to promote economic development, including investment in the community, the HIP Park, and the Manor Smart Scale project, and to maintain low real estate taxes. As you know, each year it's a juggle because we have limited resources to be able to do that. The reality is we can't always make the improvements when we want, and we have to push projects and things to wait till we have available funding to be able to do it. But I'll say this, I think every single project on our capital improvement plan, and reviewing this past week, we've been able to complete it or get substantial progress towards its completion. And that's, the board should be commended for that. Some of the other cost drivers that are impacting us are anticipated flat revenue. We've got a few personnel priorities and staff increases. The state school shortfall, as we heard from Dr. Johnson, the composite index has moved about 1%. What that means is that's a shift of 1% from the state's budget to our budget. That impacts us. Loss of federal funding. They've been swimming in ARPA funding and COVID-19 relief funds, CARES Act funds for the last 3-4 years. That is drying up. They're finishing up the use of those funds. And they've got, mandated 3% salary increase. They're talking about the 0.5% step increase, and they've been hit with health insurance increase. Our capital improvement plan items, and also the regional jail. With changes at the jail, certainly reduction in federal inmates, our local share has bumped up a little bit. And so we've got an additional, I think, 100,000 in for operating this year. Increases, our overall local revenue is projected to be up about $1,995,046, about 6.5%. However, 642,000 of that really has to do with fund balance that we're moving over for the schools, as we talked about the work session. So really, that's about a $1.3 million revenue increase from our general fund. Real estate, relatively stable. We budgeted $9,750,000. We billed $9,527,717 this year. In a normal year, we'll grow by a couple $100,000. That's new houses added, new commercial development, real estate, all that stuff. So a couple $100,000 increase there. Personal property is relatively stable. We backed off of it last year. You remember, it was up because values were up, and we knew values were going to come down on the current year. So we dropped it back to 6.3 million. We bumped it back up a little bit, 6,550,000 in our revenue estimate. Sales tax is doing strong. We're seeing, over 10, 11% increase in that, going from 3.8 million to 4.2 million. Revenue from use of investments. I know Lou pushes this on, making sure that we're investing our money, and I think Donna's doing a great job. A lot of our CDs, we're seeing, 4, 4.5, 4.25%. Even our regular checking account is getting a good rate of interest on it. So this year, we'll probably see $900,000 in revenue, but we all know that could slow down here in the next year, right? Because as interest rates drop on the housing side and the borrowing side, that means they'll start paying out smaller amounts of interest on your accounts. So we're increasing that amount, but being careful. Most of our other revenue categories are up slightly. We have not included any ICA funding yet. I know we've talked about hoping to save that some for our capital improvement plan, not just spend it on salaries. We'd like to do something important with that. And I think it's also very prudent. I don't want to let go of that until we know what's going on with the sales tax for the schools. That's a good card to have in our deck if we get dealt that hand from the state. So right now, we're not anticipating any revenue. Personnel costs, we've included the 3%. The General Assembly has approved 3% for comp board employees. We assume that's going to get improved in the budget, just like for the teacher salaries. So that costs us $312,000. Part of that we get back. Comp board positions like deputy positions for the sheriff's office and commissioner of revenue and treasurer, they will pay a portion of those salaries. We got to pick up the benefits and the fringe. What else? FICA and the other pieces of VRS. The other pieces of it we pick up, but it's not a complete local cost. We budgeted a 5% health insurance increase. We're not going to see that. I've left it in there, which gives us a little bit of cushion. But our health insurance has done extremely well. I just got word last week, we're looking at about a 4.98% decrease. So that is fantastic.
That is great.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the last 5 years, but not many people are seeing decreases in their health insurance. And this board made a decision a few years back to go self-funded, and if we don't spend it, we save it. So we're in pretty good shape. That 5% is about $60,000 or something close to that, I think, Crystal. Yeah. Additional positions we're upgrading. So building and planning both have some part-time money in their budgets. We're proposing a full-time position if needed. If housing slows down, then we'll hold off on it. But I think that's the one area where I'll say, improved customer service is needed. I know some of the board members have heard that from the public. And also to bump our tourism assistant to full-time. We used to have a full-time when Maggie was tourism and Kate was economic development. When Chelsea came on board, we combined the position. We've hired a part-time tourism person. I think in order to keep her and keep us moving forward, it's important, but we're actually going to use some of our lodging tax money to pay for that. That's what that money is for promoting this community, and so we're going to use part of that to promote it by hiring a full-time position. Some of the other big increases, the sheriff's office. A lot of these requests, they've requested increase in overtime spending. We bumped it from 175,800 to 200. Part-time from 140 to 200. And some of this is, we've got a lot of activities outside their work. Hospital, which we get reimbursed for. Some of this, they're doing overtime out there on the highway. Some of this, they get some grant funds to run some overtime. Equipment maintenance, a lot of this, or things like the body worn cameras, those things, you have to have a maintenance service contract to be able to keep those things up, and that's all part and parcel for that. Vehicle maintenance is up from 75 to 90,000. Anybody's had worked on your vehicle, it's gotten more expensive. We haven't really added more, I'll say, vehicles to the fleet per se, because we haven't added staff, but just ensuring that the rotation is there. Vehicle purchase, it really, believe it or not, it is $80,000 a vehicle. You pay 40, but 40 is the upfit to put the police package in, put the radio in, the laptop computer, do all the mounting. Last year, we had 4 vehicles in this year's budget. 155 is general fund budget, and then we got grant funds. They got some ARPA grant funds to pay for 2 vehicles. So next year, we're still going to have 4 vehicles in the budget. That's the plan, is to rotate 4 a year, but we just got to pick up the rest of it with general fund budget. We were doing it 2 years ago. We got lucky and got a grant last year, so we saved $150,000. Courthouse security, part-time increase from 70 to 120,000. I think majority of our folks here that guard the front door are part-timers, some retirees, but just based on trends of utilization, we need to bump that budget as well. Fire and rescue, we went into this year, Lou was there and Trey sat down with the fire and rescue companies and said, hey guys, we're going to prioritize the radio system. Everybody agreed not to ask for an increase this year. I think maybe Peavers was the only one that did on the rescue side, but so we've level funded all the agencies. I think they're good with that. But remember, last couple of years, we picked up insurance, we picked up fuel, and the levy money helps with some of those, like Peavers and Meharry as well.
Increase also.
Sir?
An increase also.
And they got an increase last year. That's right. So at the same time, we bumped our radio system funding from 100 to 250,000. Now, next year, if we don't get any grant funding, we've got to get that 250 up to $500,000. So that's still looming out there. That may be another good reason to hold on to that ICA money. But also, we're applying for 3 grants that total over $4 million. If we're successful on, I'd say, 2 of those grants, hopefully we'll cut this number down. That 250 will get close to covering it. And then all we got to worry about is paying the maintenance on it. I think it's a couple $100,000 beginning year 2. That's something we'll have to build in the budget in the next couple of years going down the road. But I feel really good. Trey feels good that we'll have some success on getting some grant funding. General properties, that's Randy's maintenance budget. We bumped up 15,000. We've going from a 4-year to a 6-year reassessment cycle. We needed to bump up our appropriation this year from 150 to 200,000. Registrar, they got a handful of elections coming up the year. Big part of this part-time, if we put a part-time person in that 45-day pre-election voting room, 1 person can cover it. If we staff it with election officials, you have to have 2 people. That's what the rules are, but it's cheaper for us to have 1 part-timer than pay the election person to work the room, because you got to have 2. Regional Economic Development Initiative we're working on with the CRC. We got 25,000 in the budget this year, proposing 40 for next year. Our price tag's 55, but we've saved money from the last 2 years. It's sitting in our reserve account. We knew it was going to be greater. We started putting money aside for it, so we're ready for it. Audit services up from 100 to 125,000. Some of that's our pre-audit cost has gone up, but I can tell you, I think the product that we're getting from both the pre-auditor and the auditor is really good, and I think they're happy with the way the books look for the county. And our school capital improvement funding, this is funding we had put aside previously for the elementary school project. Part of it needs, till we figure out what's going with the sales tax, it needs to grow as the value of a penny grows, so we just bumped up 25,000 there. Solid waste, professional services up from 200 to 275,000. Part of that that's the construction supervision for cell F at the landfill. That's a good chunk of that. We've still got money in there for paving, eventually a new scale house, and each year we're replacing bins. Jeff just got a delivery, I think this week, of some new 30-yard, 40-yard container bins. We're going to order some, hopefully, in next year's budget as well. Our capital improvement fund, that was the first year I got here. We increased taxes 4 pennies, and we've been able to keep $508,000 a year. That pays for, Worsham Convenience Site next year is going to get built, and then hopefully it'll put aside some money towards the animal shelter. Sandy River, this is the same budget amounts we have in the current year. Honestly, I think very soon we're going to find out with the state where we're going with Sandy River. But in the meantime, we've got the funding there still left in the budget, including the debt service, which was a good chunk of that was the 3 pennies from last year that y'all increased the tax rate. Our contingency funding, including the budget, is $150,114. That's 0.46 of your general fund budget, just below what our finance policy says we should have. That's close, yeah. Especially given, I think this year the board hasn't spent. Have we spent maybe just a couple of small things out of the contingency line? So it's always good. So the fund balance is your big savings account, right? The contingency fund is the money that you have within your current year's budget to address kind of items of an emergency nature, like if a police cruiser was totaled tomorrow and you got 15,000 from insurance, but it was going to cost 60, so you needed 45,000 after the insurance check to pay for a new vehicle you didn't expect to. That's where we would go pull from that account. So, included funding since the last meeting, estimated state revenues included in the budget, school budget increases, local operating, we plugged that 892,971 in there, which gives them a total of 10,989,342, and debt service of 522,279. The debt service piece that we have plugged in the budget for the elementary school, that's sitting on your side of the books. You control those funds, not the school board. So right now, we could take that debt on and the school board wouldn't have to do that, but that's where that money sits. Outside agency increases included what I had recommended with the board adjustments that we had last meeting. Those are included in the budget. So when we got down at the end of the day with the budget, we were initially out by $1,280,867. That was pre that $800,000 request from the schools. But to close the gap, we added in some state revenue increases that we estimated, reevaluated our local revenue. We used some fund balance for one-time capital items, and we cut and trimmed items from the budget based on the priorities that the board set. Lastly, I always like to show this. This is the real estate rate for Prince Edward at 51 cents and how we compare regionally. I think we'll be fourth from the bottom at 51 cents. It's interesting to note too, you saw Amelia take a big drop last year. Amelia was in the 70s, but Amelia had a reassessment in there, and I think they're battling through that again right now. All right, David? Trying to figure out where they're going to go, but I think Prince Edward's right in the middle of the pack. I'm not going to say where we should be or close, but, we are right in the middle of the region as far as the tax rate. I never like to be sitting out on top. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. If not, I know we've got to open the public hearing, Madam Chair, and either before or after, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Stanley?
I do.
Okay.
Doug, do you feel like we're in a good spot? We've got reassessment coming up next year. Do you think we'll be able to equalize?
I think, number one, there's two big projects, the elementary school project and Sandy River. If the sales tax issue comes on, it'll take care of our needs there, and maybe even give us some cash to help address Sandy River. If Sandy River comes on, that's the one area that we may have to look at trying to address with adjustment of the tax rate. The only other area would be where we end up with the schools, and as far as their actual expense, is that 800,000 additional, a real 800,000, or is it still a little bit of a guessing game? Like I said, when I look at the last 5 years of what they've actually spent, I feel comfortable. So I think, number one, I think the county's in great financial shape. We'll be able to fully answer that question once we know what's going on with the elementary school project in Sandy River.
Thank you.
But our fund balance is healthy. We've been able to add to it. And a big part of that, honestly, has been the school return of the last few years. I think we've underspent our budget for the most part every year. We budgeted conservatively. We've met the revenue projections every year. So we haven't left any gaps or holes in the budget that we had to go back and fill. So I feel pretty good from that standpoint as well.
Great.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone online who cares to speak? No one is online. No one is in the audience. I will close the public hearing. Thank you. Is there anything else that calls the need for our attention this evening?
No, ma'am. Again, as per state law, we can't take any action on the budget. I think the board already approved the additional appropriation for the schools at the earlier budget meetings. So I think we're in good shape there. And I would request that the board recess this meeting until April 30th at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly second that we recess this meeting to April the 30th at 7 p.m. Mr. Gillum?
Yes.
Dr. Pride?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins? Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Myself, yes. We are now recessed.